Hi, everybody. Great to have you with us. Welcome to this session. Welcome to the festival, first of all. I know you've had lots of welcomes. I don't know about you, but it's blazing hot here today. This is not the ideal day to be, sitting in front of a screen 24/7, but I hope the format enables you to pick and choose the sessions that you want to be involved in. Thanks a lot for coming to this session here. The name above the door is Everyone's an Innovator. We're going to be focusing today on culture change, on some of the things which Kate Rayworth talked about this morning, actually, this notion of shifting behaviours and reassigning priorities. We are, I guess, in our backed innovation is implicit in what we do, but we also have a little window today onto urban innovative actions through Oana being here from Cluj, which is a UIA and an RBAC project. Let me just explain a little bit of the background, introduce our speakers, and then we can kind of jump in. So plan A for this session was to have a stripped down, kind of unplugged session. Instead of having 5 or 6 speakers with presentations, we were going to keep it really kind of low key and to have lots of space to engage. So that's still the plan. We're still sticking with that one, thankfully. In the original lineup, we had Carolina from Birmingham joining us. Carolina sadly went down with COVID about 10 days ago, so we hope she's better and send her our best wishes. Delighted to have Joe Brzezinska from Łódź, which is the lead partner in the Birmingham project for RBAC. So I'll leave Joe to say a bit more shortly about where she fits in. So we've got 2 cities here, and we've got Cluj-Napoca, and we have Łódź, one in Romania, one in Poland. Looking at 2 different aspects of innovation, I guess. So one is about the notion of looking at regeneration and the role of city officials as kind of catalyst agents, people who can empower communities. The take in Cluj-Napoca, which comes from the InnovaTO-r Network, a little bit different, more about looking at open innovation, more looking at kind of innovative cultures across the administration. So a nice complementary pair of stories we have here, which is really cool. The usual things apply. So if you want to jump in, then pop a question on the chat and we'll try and bring you in. As I say, we've deliberately left lots of space. So we hope there will be a time for exchange. So don't be shy. And I know we've already got, let's have a look and see who's with us. We've got people already who have lots of experience in relation to this topic. So looking forward to a really good discussion. So maybe first of all, let's maybe just start with the poll. So we've got a short poll which Jean-Christophe is going to share with you. You probably all know how to do this now. On the right-hand side of the screen, there's the chat, polls, people, Q&A, and Kahoot. If you click on the polls tab, it will drop down and give you some options around what the biggest barriers are. So if we're thinking about what gets in the way, and we're thinking about the organizations we would like to see, what kinds of things are stopping us from being more innovative and having more innovative behaviors in local authorities? Just take a couple of minutes, folks, and choose your favorite there. And Oana and Joe, please feel free to jump in as well and let us know what you think is the biggest kind of thing that gets in there with the biggest obstacle for us to try and get across. So leave that for a minute or 2, and then we'll have a look at the answers. Just to run through them, employees feel disempowered, lack of resources, time and money, the level of skills and education combined with lack of incentives, and maybe something else. Okay, so Jean-Christophe, can we just have a look at the responses for this one, so we can just get a sense of what people think is what are the key things? Is that going to jump up automatically on my screen? I hope so. Jean-Christophe, are you there to?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, can we see the results of the poll? Have people voted?
It is shown on the. You can just click on the show results.
Okay. Sorry, I've had about 25 training sessions. I don't know where the show results button is. Just tell me where that is. If I click on polls, it's just the poll that comes up. Can you help Jean-Christophe?
You can just click below in the tab right. There is a button show result, and you can see the result.
Yeah, I don't see that button, I'm afraid. No, I can't see it. We'll maybe come back to that actually. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So let's just get started. So Oana, welcome. Great to see you. As I say, you're here wearing I can see you've got your InnovaTO banner in the background. So that's the first hat you're wearing. Are you also involved through the UIA project in this kind of other big innovation project, which you might want to say a little bit about as well? Well, the floor is yours. Thanks for joining us, and it's great to see you.
Hello. Thank you very much for having me here, and I really hope to be able to share something that's also interesting for the others, because for me, for sure, I already got my prize by participating in all these projects. I feel like Christmas is every single day for me for the last 2 days, and I'm not kidding.
Great. So tell us about the Cluj story. If we're thinking about this innovation journey that you've been on, for those who maybe haven't been to the InnovaTO stand yet, who don't know much about Cluj, just give us a bit of context. Tell us about the city, and maybe just tell us about some of the kind of key things we need to know about the transition that Cluj has been on over the last sort of 2 years or so.
Yes. So the last definition I heard of somebody else coming to visit us, and the things they said at the end was that they believe that this is the city with the most numerous people with ADHD, which is the syndrome of overactivity and lack of patience. And I think we are all kind of a little bit touched by this in the good way, because we discovered that connecting, exchanging, participating, all of us to the others' projects and contexts makes us all overlap and achieve more than each of us individually would have in otherwise. So for the last 5 years, maybe, I feel like this family that this city has always been. It's a city small enough for everybody to know each other and big enough to have a little bit of everything here. I think this is like the shortest way I can describe Cluj. But what we discovered in the last years, it was that even with all these ingredients, talking with each other, collaborating a lot, putting each other at the same table will boost everybody's results and achievements. And InnovaTO-r was one of the first projects as such to show us that with the local resources, as much or as many or as few as you have, you can try to change the mix and gain something more. And this was, as I used to tell Eddie in other occasions, such a wow idea to think about a public employee as the person who has this specific overlap of being an expert, knowing the limits, the rules, the laws, the regulations, and all the boring stuff that normally provides people from trying to change something, and also having this quality of very empowered citizen, because they belong to the place, they know the home, the streets, the problems in a very, very personal way that allows them to maybe have different solutions just because they have such a good understanding of the problem and such a good expertise on what the limits of the solutions might be. And when you know what's not possible, well, that's a big opportunity, because knowing precisely what's not going to work gives you all the small places of light of what might work. And this was what InnovaTO-r was all about in Cluj. And we started this experiment using the tools that people used to know in the city from the public budgeting platform that we kind of worked with for the last years, but was not accessible for the public employees because they were seen by the rules of the public budgeting system as being in conflict of interest. So using that tool that they kind of knew, but creating a special designed platform inside the city and tackling these problems, ideas, and potential solutions from this InnovaTO-r platform offered us the opportunity to discover those unheard voices, those people who never thought that if you ask them, you could actually get an answer of a tailor-made solution that will work, will not cost anything more, and will not, we will not be forbidden by any rule or law. And this was pretty much what InnovaTO was in Cluj for the first iteration. I just finished a meeting for another project that we had, and I realized how much this changed me, because I started to look at my own team from an innovator perspective. I don't look at my colleagues as the ones able to do the jobs that they do for the last 10 years we work together, but I look at them as the opportunity they might offer me to do something completely different that they never did before, just because they are from here. And if I was able to look at things from this perspective, why shouldn't I try to look with them from the same perspective and see what gives us? And I already, I don't know, boosted the results of my efforts at least twice for the last 2 weeks, because I have now 2 colleagues who are working for the second iteration in InnovaTO-r, and everything can be done more quickly than it was in the first one. First, because it's not an experiment anymore, and second, because there are 3 of us, not 2, not just 1.
Can I ask you, you mentioned the public budgeting. How important, because I guess this is something you're building layer upon layer upon layer. So you didn't start InnovaTO from a standing start. You had some momentum already. How important was that initial kind of catalyst from the participatory budgeting work in terms of helping you move to the next stage with InnovaTO? Was that a big bonus, do you think?
I think so, because public budgeting in Cluj started with a cultural change, if you ask me. In 2013, when we first tried this experiment, so we looked at the tool as it was, public budgeting, documented process from a lot of Portuguese cities mostly. We tried to apply it in Cluj, and the first reaction that we got, people specifically connected that this is something tailor-made for retired people who have time to come and put together at the table and start to co-design and tackle problems and whatever. And then it directly took people back to some communist heritage that they had in the early years of communism that I never experienced as a person. But apparently, when it started in Romania, it was a little bit like that. People putting themselves at the table and trying to find ways to do things. So it was, it was not what we wanted when we started it. So the work for the last 3 or 4 years, when we started to kind of artificially feed this process with younger audience, different audience, more expert audience, more challenging subjects, more, I don't know, pushing it towards the digital space. And it was, at the beginning, everybody said it's a bad idea because public budgeting is only interesting for elderly and they are not digital. And when we created the digital platform, we engaged with this completely different target that we discovered in the city. And all of this was very well known by the public employees and not accessible. They only looked at it as a place tasks come from, because at the end of the process, you had this list of projects which were awarded and needed to be implemented. So by the time we tried to propose InnovaTO-r platform as the tool to transfer this good practice from Torino to Cluj, you had these mixed feelings, because already I have the public budgeting which is giving me extra tasks, and now you're asking me an extra task to do that. But once we did all the workshops and all the stories from the other cities that tried other ways to implement InnovaTO-r, it kind of opened a conversation that ended up so well with the first iteration of InnovaTO-r, and these colleagues of ours who are they cannot believe yet that they managed to change something in the city or in the city just by submitting a project on a platform. You know, it's amazing and interesting, but public budgeting heritage, negative or positive, was there, and it worked to boost the project.
And just explain to us where you're sitting in the administration. If we had an organogram of how the local authority structure looked, are you in the European department? Are you in the chief executive department? Are you in the strategy department? So just tell us where you fit. And I've got another question about how you work across these different barriers and silos.
I think my position internally in the City Hall also helped InnovaTO-r, because I'm so disruptively hard to place. Basically, I joined the City Hall 10 years ago to be the spokesperson and to coordinate the public communication of the City Hall towards the media, mostly back then. And in time, it became less about media, because media decreased so much in Cluj in terms of impact and activity, but people and citizenship got so vocal and so interested and so engaged that I kind of changed my object of my work with the city. I did not release press releases anymore. I started to organize meetings with citizens on topics, and I joined the Civic Innovation and Imagination Center that my colleague Ovidiu coordinates and the mayor imagined one day. And we kind of built it from scratch without having a plan. So it's not a structured position that I have. Officially, I'm the Chief Service of Citizen Information Center, and that also I think it's a serendipitous place for me in the organigram, because puts me in the position in the office of the city hall where people come to ask for questions and receive and submit requests and take the approvals and all the documents, but also the internal communication happens. And from that overlap, my personal overlap, I kind of find myself in a very good and, I don't know, fertile, if you want, position for the InnovaTO project and concept. I am a little bit overachiever and over agitated, if you want, and also that also contributed to the project. And I'm very, very curious. So I put my nose in all the other departments' job because I needed to communicate about it. And since you got to know all these things from all the levels and the stairs of the city hall, at some point it makes sense for you to connect them. And this is where now I am. I think it's not just me anymore. We are kind of 10 people doing this. We are interconnecting departments and covering for all those jobs in the city hall that are not yet defined, which is, for example, connecting with the ecosystem, trying to participate for the co-design of the innovation fund. This is something that we are doing these days. Trying to figure out what the city needs as pieces in order to be let alone to do the good job. You know, the city as the local stakeholders, not just us.
And there's a good question from Joe, which I'll pick up in a second. But before I go to Joe's question, so we've got this, and you've mentioned quite a few things. You're building up a picture of probably quite a rich innovation ecosystem in the city already. So you talked about the mayor, being instrumental in setting up this innovation center. You talked about your own role, linking as a kind of cross-pollinator, if you like, linking all these different pieces together. I'll borrow that phrase from BPathNet. Did you find some resistance in some sections of the organization more than others? I mean, because, like you said earlier, this is seen by some people as being an additional thing to do, a bit of a pain in the ass on top of all the other things they have to do. So not everyone welcomes this with open arms. So have you found some resistance, and how have you dealt with that?
I think that you can call resistance the lack of participation for those who did not use this tool. This is how I see it. So up of hundreds of people, only dozens of people contributed with projects. So all the missing ones, I see them as resistant yet at this point, and still I see there all the space and the tasks to do for the InnovaTO-r teams, the internal Cluj InnovaTO-r teams. But in the same time, I feel like we were very privileged with this project not to have all the reasons we could have had maybe 2 years or 3 years ago, because all of this representation of the outcomes that public budgeting offered already for our colleagues, and also for the enthusiasm and the introduction that the mayor did to the people inside. So we started with this very, very important moment of the mayor bringing people in a hall and telling them, please use this tool and put their ideas. We would like to see the most crazy ones, the worst ones. There is no wrong answer. Try to do this exercise of imagining something, what can be done with the same resources, the same laws, the same specifics that you have, but with a different point of view. So I think these two ingredients were at the core of what InnovaTO-r looked like in the end. And maybe also the fact that it was internally designed, and this was the ULG mission that was, I think, really inspired back then, not to be accessible to people with
the cops are coming to get you, Anna.
Sorry?
The police are coming to get you, I think, by the signs of it.
Doesn't matter. I can take it. So the fact that they knew this is something just for us, the people with no executive power. it was like a club, if you want.
Mm-hmm.
It was a shy club at the beginning because I felt that maybe more people could join, but in the end, it's a start. And when you have people to show, examples to show, good practices to show, it's even easier to start the second iteration. We are working as we speak. And another thing that we did, and this was like with the help of COVID, we didn't manage to have all the workshops that we wanted, and we had scheduled, so we had some money spared, and we wanted to make the best use we can use online with it. So we created a Romanian innovator, if you want. The platform that we created, we cloned it with 10 other platforms, and we offered it to other cities, and 6 or 7 are already taken, so we only have 3 to offer. And we will try to take the club further and create a club of voices of people from public administration from cities all over Romania. And we'll see what that gets us to.
Right. Just, and you mentioned the word enthusiasm. And sometimes if you, I mean, you gave the nice example of the mayor getting everybody and sort of firing everyone up. In a sense, that's difficult, but it's not often the most difficult part. Often the most difficult part is keeping things going, because people are busy, interest falls away. You have this kind of like classic kind of paradigm where things go like that and then they fall down again. Joe's question is about how do you maintain for the some of this work and the budgeting, for example, some of the work where you're engaging externals, which we'll come on to talk about with the Wood story. How do you maintain the levels of enthusiasm and commitment? I mean, are there any kind of secrets to that, or is it just about feet and pounding the streets? What have you learned about what we can do to keep people engaged?
I think the public budgeting, which is the first one, it's feeding itself from results. When you walk on the street, for example, 2 days ago, I drove my car in the nighttime and I saw all the places where people can cross street and are over illuminated. And I just remembered that it's a public budgeting project. So to put more light on the places where people cross the street in the nighttime, it's such a basic thing to do, but nobody thought about it before somebody came and submitted it to the public budgeting platform. It was doable. So I think it feeds itself from the examples and the successes. Also, all the bragging, if you want, maybe it's not the perfect choice of words at this point, but all the validation that this project and these examples got in Romania also helped a lot, because you have this local pride right now of people saying, I voted for the public budgeting, I proposed for the public budgeting. And the same type of energy, it moves internally in the city hall with InnovaTO-r.
Yeah. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time now, and maybe 10 years ago, we used to talk about innovation in the context of city authorities, and people got really excited. And I wonder whether, with the whole COVID thing in the pandemic, with people feeling so exhausted and fed up, is it hard? Is innovation now a dirty word? Is it harder to mobilize? And it's because they just think, actually, I want to keep as far away from additional things as possible. Has it got harder, or has the pandemic, you mentioned something about the pandemic was helpful in some ways. So just maybe before we move on to the Wood story and invite Joanna to come into the conversation, how has it affected this culture shift, what you've been doing, say, over the last sort of 16 months or so, when we've been going through this horrible experience?
I think that in Cluj cases is a less dirty word than smart. Everybody's allergic to smart city. We overused it so much that nobody can stand it anymore. So this is like the other word you can use, and it's better. And the COVID context and all the disruption that it brought, it was a huge internal disruption. Imagine people who work on timesheets, really strict. So you could get penalized for 5 minutes, being late 5 minutes at the work before the pandemic, and you moved straight to home office, because a specific amount of our colleagues needed to stay home in order for us to be able to keep the sanitary measurements in place. So it was seeing things and call them innovation and not have to do anything with smart. I think it was the safe way for the innovation not to be a dirty word, if you ask me. It's pretty much my personal perception is that people mostly see innovation as the human part of the change you can bring in a lifetime. That doesn't need money, technology, a special school, and a special language that only wizards can speak. Innovation is something that's human and not necessarily cost money, and people can do it.
Okay. Well, Anna, thanks so much. That's great. Stay with us because we'll bring you back in shortly. Before I go to Joe, now I've finally worked out how the polls work, and thanks to all of you in the audience who've helped me to realise that if you don't vote, then you can't see the answers. That's my takeaway from this session. It's a pretty even spread, actually, as we can see. So it's all of the three we've got up there, it's actually split right across. So lack of resources is an issue. Skills education is an issue, incentives for sure, and this feeling of disempowerment. So the role of the mayor is maybe important in some places where you get that signal from the top. Maybe we'll go back to that later on while Oana's blowing kisses to her colleague. Okay, brilliant. So Joe, great. Thanks so much, Joe, for stepping in at the last minute. It's great to have you with us. We've worked together before a number of things. I was super happy when you said you were able to join our session and contribute to the conversation. Again, just for those people who have not been to Łódź and who don't know much about Łódź, maybe just fill in some of the details, and then I think you've got a few slides to share with us too. Yeah. Thanks a lot. The floor is yours, Joe.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me and allowing me to step in for Carolina, whom I will mention in my short presentation later on for sure. So basically, I'm from Łódź, population-wise, third biggest city in Poland, in the heart of it. And I happen to be a project coordinator of an urban regeneration mixed transfer network, InnovaTO-r Transfer Network. And today I would like to tell you about our innovative activities that we carried out within this project. And I totally agree with what Oana said, how she concluded her speech saying that in order to be innovative, you don't need to have any wizardry or special knowledge. It's just people and goodwill. And I think that what I'm about to show to you actually proves it. So allow me to share my screen. I have a short presentation for you. And please let me know if you see it, because you should see it by now. Great. So today in this short presentation, I would like to tell you about an innovative solution that was introduced in my beautiful hometown of Łódź to facilitate a complex process of revitalization, which also required creating a kind of smart support system for our residents. Then I will tell you about the evolution of the role of mediators in Łódź within the URBAC project. And in conclusion, I will make a general summary explaining how grassroots activities carried out by mediators affected actually the entire city office and changed relations between residents, NGOs, and local community leaders. So over the last few years, we have become a leader in revitalization in Poland. In 2016, we kicked off with 8 large-scale urban regeneration projects in the degraded historic city center. Our goal was to make it a vibrant place, bustling with life, full of open-minded people and mindful of the needs of others in their neighborhood. This is why we dedicated a series of social activities to residents who are affected somehow by the revitalization process. And the key role is played here by the so-called area hosts and lighthouse keepers, who not only serve as mediators between the residents and local institutions and assist in relocations, but also motivate people to take action themselves. So the scale of the introduced changes, as well as the focus we put on people and our receptiveness to their needs, were noticed in Europe and awarded with the URBAC Good Practice label. Owing to this, we could share our solution with other European cities and learn from their experience, which allowed us also to reflect on our good practice and modify mediators' role at different stages of the process, which I'm going to tell you about now. So at the initial stage of urban regeneration process, mediators basically provide up-to-date information on all activities and investments planned and support residents in relocation and often life change, which accompanies it. In which there has been set up a team of mentioned earlier lighthouse keepers and area hosts. These are extraordinary civil servants who performed their work in an unconventional way. They stepped out of the office, knocked on residents' doors, and asked how they can help. Supported families in moving to into another flat. They helped with bureaucracy and with finding solutions to everyday problems. They motivated them, for example, in seeking employment, in taking advantage of rent payment schemes, or applying for social support in different programs. During the investment process, when the revitalization projects are in full bloom or about to be completed, a local community organizer steps in. He or she is a kind of a leader figure who is to bring people together, encourage them to cooperate, to take up joint activities for the common good of the local neighborhood. And this is where we introduced in Łódź lessons learned in our partner cities, mainly Braga and Birmingham, taking advantage of social and cultural animation to release the potential of local communities, focusing on ideas and joint actions, searching for local leaders, building cooperation network, and a kind of resource base in the area. Finally, once revitalization project is completed and local community integrated, there is a place for an area host, but with a more managerial role. We saw successfully working in another partner city of ours, that is Toulouse Metropole. Area host, the one that we see at the final stage of the process, sees the given neighborhood as a whole, brings together all stakeholders, and supports various activities in the area. He or she does not initiate them as it was in the prior stages because the community is mature enough. Rather serves as a representative of the residents, local institutions, and organizations in the area in order to facilitate further development with the support of municipality, of course, when needed. We pictured the whole journey with mediation and various mediators. We call them our city heroes. And you can find the whole story of theirs in a comic book. After my presentation, I will put in the chat bar a link to our website where you will find this comic book, which happens to be our learning log in this project as well. And it showcases the solutions we developed, focusing on the role and competences of mediators. We present the methods of cooperation with residents by adapting to various stages of revitalization process. So please feel free to copy the link and read the whole story and learn how to reach out to different groups of inhabitants. So in case of revitalization in Łódź, we didn't have to negotiate much with local authorities to achieve their consent for mediators' work, innovative work, in our opinion. Of course, EU funds were a great help here because we jumped at the chance, submitted several project applications, both co-financed from the ERDF and ESF, to try and test more brave ideas. And this allowed us to hire mediators for a start. Now they are regular city employees, but prior to that, we had this financial support, and it is important. It was important in this case. Nevertheless, our Lady Mayor strongly believes, as we do, of course, that residents not only should have their say, but also co-create the city. Hence, the new city development strategy is co-designed with inhabitants in a year-long process with city walks, workshops in different districts, and various forms of public consultations. Moreover, there are several programs addressed at residents and local communities supporting neighborhood initiatives like Green Yard, local initiative, microgrants, or the participatory budget that Oana mentioned also in Cluj. And to this, in the coming years, there will be many new social functions introduced in renovated tenement houses within the whole revitalization process, including local activity centers, youth and neighborhood clubs. And all these places basically aim to integrate, activate, and build both neighborly ties and intergenerational relations. And that's exactly what we did through our Mediators work within an urban local group, celebrating its 2-year cooperation during a neighborhood picnic you see on pictures on the slide. The event gathered people of different age and social groups living and working in the area who often didn't know each other prior to the establishing of this ULG group. So many initiatives start small, but they make big changes. And thanks to revitalization projects in which all participants, civil servants, local authorities, external stakeholders, had to think and act outside the box to break the silos. We proved ourselves, and city mayors, of course, that area and people-based approach pays off. This way we learned to trust each other, and we prove that such cooperation is successful, that it is possible to achieve positive results working differently, directly, hand in hand with our residents, who are not only our partners, but also partners as local leaders. So that's basically.
Fantastic, thank you. That was great. I love some of those graphics. Jean-Christophe just shared the link to your comic book learning log. It's a really nice way to package the story. So that looks wonderful. So thanks so much for that. Really, really good. And I've got a question from Oana, which I'll just come to shortly. But I guess, so it's a very different dimension to it. Innovation is a word which covers a whole range of different things, obviously. So here we're looking at, a different kind of approach to the one we've heard about from Cluj. This focus on neighbourhood, this massive regeneration project. I know that, decanting is a horrible word, moving people out of their houses and then moving them back in again. It was, a major physical operation. We didn't mention the trust word. We might come back to trust because I think that's a kind of key word in the mix, maybe in both of these conversations. Something I'd be interested in finding out from you is, well, let's ask Oana's question first. Oana's question, which you can see in the chat, I think is these special roles, and I'll ask you a bit more about these special roles in a minute or two. Do they get some sort of certification? Just tell us a little bit more about how their function operates and what's in it for them, basically.
So basically, when we started to plan, design the revitalization process itself, as you said, it is a large-scale operation on a vast area in the historic city center, and it includes mainly physical intervention, the hard measures, but it combines various activities in the social dimension as well. But they will start once the physical revitalization is completed. But in order to facilitate this process, to make it flow swiftly, we decided to hire a team of mediators. And at the very beginning, these were 16 people. They are normal, but at the same time, extraordinary civil servants. Most of them had psychological, pedagogical, or similar background, but mainly because they knew that they will have to work directly, face to face, with our residents, with people. So these were when we were recruiting these the people for this post, we stressed that communication and social skills are very important. They received some extra training during the process. We had also a wider training for revitalization stakeholders in order to inform other public institution employees about what revitalization is about, because we believe it's not only about physical intervention, but also making a change in the economic, environmental, spatial, technical, and social sphere to ensure that after this decade of investments, because that's how the process was initially planned, we will make a quality change in the city. We will change people, we will change lives of people living there. Because what I haven't said at the beginning, but I'm usually stressing when I'm speaking about Łódź, is that we are, although population-wise, we are the third biggest city in Poland in terms of tenement houses and communal flats, we are proportionally the biggest landlord. and majority of communal flats are located in old, historic, often listed townhouses in the city centre. So we want to change not only the image of the heart of Łódź, but also the quality of life there.
Yeah. And can I ask you just about the people who have these roles, the area hosts and the others that you described, and the mediators, how are they perceived by the regular civil servants who aren't, like them? And these are unhelpful phrases to use, I know, but I mean, are they perceived as, because in a sense they might be seen as being in the middle, and life in the middle can be quite dangerous, where the community might see you as being not one of us, one of them, and your civil service colleagues may say you exactly the same way, not one of us, one of them. So there's a risk for them they're kind of caught in the crossfire, and become a bit isolated. So in terms of their profile, how they work, is all peace, love, and understanding across the departments, or are people a bit suspicious and these people are a bit different and odd? I mean, just tell us a bit about how that fits things. It's a very unusual kind of structure you've just described.
Okay, so I should start with saying that once we started the revitalization process, we established a separate department, bureau I work at. It is called Revitalization Bureau. And prior to that, we didn't have this separate department. So my unit, my department is dedicated to carry on the whole process and to monitor it so that it ends up successfully. And speaking of those particular team of mediators, civil servants, well, they play an important role in this whole process because on the one hand, they are not typical city officers wearing white shirts and answering phones more often than not, saying that, oh, this matter should be solved by another department, not us. But they seek for solution, and they seek how to help every resident that approaches them. So their role is actually to mediate also between the departments. They are the ones who call social services department or the communal flats department to help our resident find a temporary flat, fill in all the documents, submit an application for social benefit or communal flat benefit, because many people are not aware that there are such support tools available in the city. I would say that cooperation, interdepartmental cooperation between other city offices and these mediators is rather friendly. I mean, everything relies on relationships. So once they were hired here and they introduced themselves to other employees and they established these procedures, they didn't face any communication problems or disagreement, because they still work in the municipality. But what is a huge asset of these posts and these people is that they are being perceived by residents in a completely different way, because they come to their house, they knock on their doors, and they are trusted. Before that, communication between the municipality and the resident was, oh, I don't trust them. I'm not answering any correspondence from the city hall. If I'm not going to answer this phone or open this letter, probably I won't learn that I have rent payment debts.
Yeah.
But that's not how it works. So these people do not wear smart clothes. They seem to be ordinary persons, but at the same time, they're doing massive administrative work.
Okay. And just, I was going to, Maria João has just asked a couple of questions. Thanks, Maria João, because you asked a question that I was going to come on to. So the second part of the question is the financial sustainability of the model. So let's come on to that. But the first one links just a little bit to what you've just been talking about. Just tell us how you went about recruiting these people. I mean, you talked about the skill set, and you talked about the person specification, if you like, the profile. These people are not typical, as you say, they're not buttoned up tie, standard issue civil servants. Just tell us a little bit briefly about how you went about recruiting them.
So As I said, we stress that we need people who have strong social skills and who are not afraid to work like face to face and directly with people from difficult social backgrounds, meaning our residents. So I mean, we didn't stress that you need to have a psychology degree because sometimes it's not a must. But it happened that many of those people did have such or similar one, and they in their resumes they had, for example, street working experience, so working with children and kindergartens, because working with our residents, with families, meaning not only working with adults, because you're also supporting in the relocation process for families, meaning also elderly people and children. So we put huge stress on those soft skills and this, I would say, openness to people's problems and to seeking solutions, how to solve these problems.
Okay. And
apart from that, if I may add, all mediators received for the I don't want to give you the exact number because I might be mistaken, but for the first 2 or 3 years of their work, they received psychological supervision support, because this is not an ordinary administrative work.
Yeah.
It is burdensome, also in an emotional way, because you're dealing sometimes with very difficult life situations. So all of these people had a support from a professional therapist whom they could regularly visit or meet on a weekly basis in order to discuss the problems that they were dealing with in their work.
Okay, I've got a little plug in the in the chat there. Thanks, Alex. Thanks for joining us. Just this notion of because I've got a final question for you both, and time goes quickly in these sessions. I got a final question, which is going to be the question of our session: is everyone an innovator? So I'll come back to that. But Joe, just briefly, in terms of sustainability going forward, can this carry on indefinitely? I mean, nothing carries on indefinitely, but what's the plan going over the next few years with this work? Will it continue in the short term for as long as we know?
Definitely. Well, for sure, as I tried to stress, EU funds were not without importance, because thanks to this, we were able to hire these people. And of course, not all of them are still with us, or not all of them are on board, but not that big team is needed anymore, because we are at the end of the relocation process, but it's not the end of the whole process, the revitalization process per se, because we will be moving these people in again, those who, at least those, minority of them who declared coming back to their previous flats. But this is where the urban regeneration mix came in the perfect moment, because we learned that their competences can be upscaled, widened to local community organizers, as we saw them in Braga and Birmingham. That it's not only about solving everyday problems of residents that are in need, and we happen to meet them in this revitalization journey, but it is also about supporting the community, the neighborhood.
Okay, great. And that, I mean, I wonder whether those people in those roles, whether they would see themselves as innovators, because these are very different types of innovation. The kind of stuff we talked about with the one is open innovation. It's it's a kind of classic organizational, when people say innovation, it's what we imagine if we don't imagine people in white coats or whatever. But what you described is a very different version, but nonetheless still, an innovative model, a different way of doing things. So super, thanks so much, Joe. Brilliant. My final question for both of you before I say a few words just to wrap up is this question. We said everyone's an innovator. So is that true from your experience? And I'm going to ask Oana first. Within administrations, is it true? And what is our approach to maximizing the innovation potential? Just very briefly, you could say from the work you've done in Cluj, Oana, what's your take on that?
I think also, I mean, doing something different, I think it's interesting and hard, definitely hard, but making it sustainable and being perseverant in using that tools, I think it's the hardest thing to do. And I think that if we want to be able to measure, if we want to be able to, I don't know, in 2 years or 3 years, to look at things, at people, at processes, at change from a comparative perspective, we really need to pass it on an executive terms to people who feel inspired and motivated to do it. Because the biggest trap is to only try it, test it, see how it smells and how it tastes, and then go for the next beautiful flower, And I feel like that's our lesson to learn in terms as a team, as a public administration body. We need to, while we still go further and find more things to do, more lessons to learn, and more methodologies to transfer, we still need to kind of stay also and repeat this one in order to become our own,
Okay, great, thanks. Joe, how about you? I mean, I imagine you've got lots of civil servants working in the city authority, and we're almost describing a sort of, like a public civic innovation acupuncture, where it's tiny little parts of the organization, and the massive part is kind of left behind. So if we're sticking pins in and we're trying to choose the right places, how do we kind of maximize the innovation potential? How do we scale and build, like Luana has talked about, on the kind of lessons that you've learned in Wood so far?
I think that what we've learned is that the mediator's role may and should evolve to more mature roles that I showed you and you might see in the comic book. Meaning, for a start, we introduced mediators who were accompanying residents like in their daily problems. But then we wanted to upscale this activity and find for local leaders. Yesterday, I used this gardening metaphor, and I hope that we will manage to do that, that we planted the seed in the local neighborhood that we were working with within our urban local group. That the lady that kind of recruited herself as a director of an orchestra will stay there despite our gradual absence, because we're not going to monitor that regularly the activity of a ULG as we did during the course of the project. So I really hope, and for now it looks so, she will continue the work that we started there. So I feel that in the field of our activity, meaning building local neighborhoods, what we can and should do, and that is the plan, is that we want to integrate and animate more local neighborhoods on the revitalization area. Okay, for now we won't be able to do it in the whole town, but we're focusing still on the quite a big area, and there is a lot to do there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've just shared with us, thanks, Joe, for sharing the video, which again just gives a bit more information. And it goes without saying that both of these city stories, lots and lots of information captured and on the respective project websites. Immediately after this is an InnovaTO session you can join to carry on the conversation about open innovation. I mean, just maybe time for one final question from the audience, which is just connecting this with, I guess, something which Kate mentioned this morning, this notion of procurement, about systemic shift, and I'm just working in Milan at the moment, where the city authority is a kind of well-being strategy for young people, and the city authority is looking to commission a range of services, and they're not quite sure what the services are because they're trying to push the envelope, and they look down the list and they go, well, for sure, none of these people would provide the services that we think we want to give. So there's this kind of mismatch in a sense between the way that procurement system operates. And the point that Maria João's made is sometimes we have listed professions, so it's all very kind of codified and it's all very formalized as it needs to be. But sometimes that kind of stops us from recruiting the people we need, contracting with the organizations we want. Has that been an issue for either of you? Or it sounds like from Joe's story and from your reaction, it sounds like it hasn't been a problem. Is that the case, Joe? Has it been, the contracting side hasn't been problematic for you by the sounds of it?
If
No?
I was to speak for Wood, no, I would say no. Well, basically, I mean, we started with a handful of people looking for certain competencies. There was a profile of a mediator published, and we selected people who met those criteria. Of course, on the way, not everyone remained. I mean, there were some people who changed their paths, but then They are employed as civil servants. They are not called mediators, but let's say that the description of their post includes the obligations that I described today. So it's not that they are obliged to know all the legal regulations regarding local government or I don't know, housing or public finance, because that's not the main point why they are here. Rather, we were seeking for people who would fill in this gap between local administration, the traditional one, and our residents. But they are
Okay.
still city employees.
Yeah. Okay. And Oana, just briefly, it hasn't been a problem for you guys as well, I don't think. But tell me if we're wrong.
I looked at your question from a different perspective, and I was like, I felt the frustration that we feel every time we had to hire people, because the laws of hiring in the public institution, people in Romania, is so strict and so not connected with the specific work that person is supposed to do at the end, that kind of puts us in this dynamic where when there is a position open, people used to come and join and take it, thinking that they will adjust in the end. And then you, in terms of a coordinator of that person, only can wish for that qualities that are implied by the position that you're trying to fill in to meet the ones that the people filling it in can offer. And I was thinking about this problem that we have in terms of the way it's structured, the access in the public jobs, and maybe in time when InnovaTO-r is like a pool of offering internally a space for creativity and voice, and then be able to take it further to an internal type of some sort of a policy that repositions people based on the voices that they found working on InnovaTO-r. And I think that can be like a soft internal way to solve this problem that we have, to have people in procurement that are more likely to be in green spaces, and people in green spaces that would find their voice in, I don't know, maybe some other department, cultural department or something. And maybe we can use that as well, you know, try to look at the outcomes from that perspective.
Thanks, Anna. Thanks also to you, Joe, for that. I mean, it's nice to have a bit of breathing space to go a bit deeper rather than rushing through things. I feel it's been a bit of a luxury to have this conversation. So it's been super interesting. Jean-Christophe just shared the link to the InnovaTO-r booth. There is obviously Urban Regeneration Mix, who have a kind of presence in the event, and were involved in a session which Joe was speaking at yesterday morning, which I'm sure many of you have been to. We've also got a little poll to share with you at the end, just to get your feedback on this session. And then I'll just remind you what's coming up next, because we're just coming to the end of our session. Thanks to our active contributors on the chat. Some interesting points there from Maria Joao at the end too. Jean-Christophe, can we just pop on the slide that shows us what's coming up next in the festival, so people can just orientate themselves and remind themselves where they're going next, while the police come again for Oana in Cluj.
Yes. I was like reading the chat, and I was like, I kind of lost it.
Okay, don't worry. So let me just remind you then what we've got coming up after this. So there's some as I said, a session on specifically on the InnovaTO project. I think we also have some work on from Sea Change. I'm just looking at the schedule just now. Yeah, okay. Yes, so a session on procurement, in fact, spend analysis, a session from InnovaTO, a speed networking session, some stuff on the SDGs, which we've again mentioned this morning, a new set of networks around that. And then at 15:30, we have a range of 3 different parallel sessions again. Okay, so we're going to stop just now. We're going to say thanks to all of you for joining us. Thanks to Joe and to Oana. Enjoy the rest of the festival, guys. Keep in touch. See you no doubt on a screen somewhere else. And I'll leave Jean-Christophe to put the answer up for the polls. If you could just rate the session. And great to have you with us. We'll see you all soon. Thanks again. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Joanna. Brilliant.
Very much.